My name is Arlo Bennett, 32 years old, and I just stood frozen at my parents' front door key, hovering uselessly near the lock. After a failed attempt to open it, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We changed all the locks on the front door, and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. Like she had just outsmarted me in some family spy movie. I calmly replied, noted. Clever. But you forgot one thing. Before I tell you what my parents forgot when they locked me out, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you want to see how I turned this family crisis around. I wasn't always on the wrong side of my parents' front door. Growing up in Westfield, a quiet suburb where nothing exciting ever happened, I was the kid who took apart the family computer when I was 8, not to destroy it, but to understand it. By 13, I had built my first PC from scrapped parts. While other kids were playing sports, I was writing code and learning about network security. My dad, Thomas Bennett, worked for 30 years at the same insurance firm. He's the kind of man who follows rules to the letter and expects everyone else to do the same. Mom, Karen Bennett, taught 3rd grade at the elementary school until she retired last year. She loved her students, but brought that teacher energy home too. Everything had a proper place and procedure in the Bennett household. Computers are for office work and occasional entertainment, Dad would say whenever he caught me coding late into the night. Not for making a career. They had my life mapped out: college, business degree, safe corporate job, marriage to a nice local girl, 2.5 kids, and a house 3 blocks away from theirs. The classic American dream. Their version of it anyway. But I discovered ethical hacking in college and fell in love. There's something thrilling about finding the weak points in supposedly secure systems, then helping fix them before malicious actors can exploit them. I tried explaining to my parents that companies paid good money for this skill, but they never fully understood. So, you break into computers. Legally, Mom would ask, her forehead wrinkled in confusion. It's like being a locksmith, I'd explain for the 100th time. I don't break in to steal. I break in to show where the vulnerabilities are, then help fix them. Dad would just shake his head. Sounds like justifying computer crimes with extra steps. After college, I landed a job at CyberShield, a respected security firm in Chicago. For 8 years, I built a solid reputation finding flaws in banking apps, hospital systems, and government websites. I had a downtown apartment, good friends, and work that challenged me. Life was good. Then came the tech industry layoffs. CyberShield cut 30% of their staff, including my entire department. With Chicago rent being what it was, and most companies on hiring freezes, I made the difficult decision to move back home temporarily, just until the job market improved. Of course you can stay with us, Mom had said when I called. I could hear the poorly disguised excitement in her voice. She had always hated me living so far away. Dad was more practical. How long do you think it will take to find another normal job? I didn't miss the emphasis on normal. In their minds, my career choice remained questionable at best. Suspicious at worst. The first few weeks were okay. I converted my old bedroom into a home office, set up my equipment, and started job hunting while doing freelance security work to keep my skills sharp. My parents seemed to adjust to having an adult son in the house again, though I caught them exchanging glances whenever I talked about encryption or penetration testing. The real trouble started when I overheard Mom on the phone with Aunt Susan. I don't know what he does all day on those computers, she whispered, not realizing I was in the hallway. Thomas says we should change our passwords just in case. Just in case of what? That hurt more than I wanted to admit. I'd spent my entire career protecting people from digital threats, and my own parents thought I might steal their information. Still, I tried to respect their space and privacy. I kept to my room during work hours, joined them for dinner, and even watched their favorite mind-numbing game shows without complaint. I thought we were finding a balance. Then came the day I noticed Dad struggling to remember his email password. I can help with that I offered, watching him get locked out of his account for the third time. He clutched his phone closer. No need. I'll figure it out. Later that night, I found Mom's password notebook sitting open on the kitchen counter. Written in plain sight were all their accounts: banking, email, social security. Everything with the same password: Thomas Karen 1979. Their names and wedding year: a hacker's dream and a security specialist's nightmare. I stood there staring at that notebook, torn between respecting their privacy and preventing a potential disaster. This wasn't just about them anymore. If someone got access to their accounts, it could impact their retirement funds, their medical information, everything. I needed to show them how vulnerable they were, but in a way that wouldn't frighten them. Maybe then they'd understand what I actually did for a living, and why it mattered. That decision, well-intentioned as it was, would lead directly to me standing outside my parents' house with a useless key and a text message declaring I was no longer trusted. But to understand how we got there, you need to see what happened when I tried to help my technologically challenged parents secure their digital lives. The security incident, as my parents would later dramatically call it, began on a Tuesday morning. Mom and Dad had gone to their weekly bridge game at the community center, giving me several hours alone in the house. Perfect timing to run a small security audit on their accounts and show them just how exposed they were. I wasn't doing anything malicious or illegal. This is exactly what companies hired me to do: identify vulnerabilities before the bad guys could. The only difference was that my parents hadn't exactly authorized the security check. But sometimes you need to demonstrate the danger before people take it seriously. I started with their Wi-Fi network, which was still using the default password from the internet provider, probably unchanged for 5 years. In less than 10 minutes, I was in their router settings. From there, I could have accessed every device connected to their network. Next, I tested their main email accounts. With the password from Mom's notebook, I logged into Dad's email in seconds. His account was linked to their banking, Amazon, and several medical portals. Classic security nightmare. Mom's was no better, with the added problem of having clicked yes on every cookie and permission request that had ever popped up on her screen. Their Facebook accounts were just as bad. Public profiles with enough personal information to answer most security questions for their financial accounts. Mom had even posted photos of their house with the street number visible and mentioned when they were going on vacation. I documented everything in a simple presentation, taking screenshots to show them exactly where the vulnerabilities were and how easily someone with malicious intent could exploit them. I included steps to create strong, unique passwords, enable two-factor authentication, and properly secure their accounts. The final touch was setting up a password manager that would generate and store complex passwords for them. All they would need to remember was one master password. I even wrote it down on a card: Bennett Family Safe, 2023. I was genuinely proud of my work. This would protect my parents from identity theft, financial fraud, and numerous other digital threats. I imagined them finally understanding my career choice, perhaps even bragging to their friends about their son, the cybersecurity expert. Then I heard the garage door open. Mom and Dad were back 3 hours early. Apparently, half the bridge club had come down with a stomach bug. I quickly closed my laptop but left the password manager installed on their computer. Better to explain what I'd done right away. I found them in the kitchen unpacking some groceries they'd picked up on the way home. "Hey, I want to talk to you both about something important," I began. "Can it wait, Arlo?" "We need to put these groceries away," Mom said, not looking up from her bags. "Actually, it's about your online security. I noticed some issues that could put your personal information at risk." Dad paused a carton of milk halfway to the refrigerator. "What do you mean?" "Noticed." I took a deep breath. I ran a security audit on your accounts to identify vulnerabilities. Mom stopped unpacking. You did what? I checked your accounts for security weaknesses, I explained, and I found several serious issues that need to be addressed immediately. Dad set the milk down slowly. You accessed our private accounts without permission, only to demonstrate how vulnerable they are, I said, feeling the conversation slipping away from me. Anyone could do what I just did. That's the point I'm trying to make. Mom's face had gone pale. So what hacked us? Not hacked. Security audited. I corrected. It's what companies pay me to do. I'm trying to help protect you. By invading our privacy, Dad's voice had that dangerous calm that I remembered from childhood punishments. I installed a password manager on your computer. I continued trying to steer back to the solution. It will generate strong, unique passwords for all your accounts. You'll just need to remember one master password. Mom walked to their desktop computer and saw the new software icon. You installed something on our computer without asking. It's for your protection, I insisted. Your current setup is extremely unsafe. You're using the same simple password for everything, including your banking and medical accounts. That's our business, Dad said, his voice rising. Not yours, but it's not secure. Someone could steal your identity, drain your accounts, access your medical records. So could you, apparently. Mom interrupted. I felt my frustration building. Why couldn't they understand I was trying to help? Look, I documented everything I found. I opened my laptop to show them the presentation. Here are all the vulnerabilities and how to fix them. Dad looked at the screen, his face darkening as he saw screenshots of his email inbox, bank account summary, and Facebook profile. You took pictures of our private information. His voice was dangerously quiet. Screenshots to show you the security issues, I clarified. This is standard procedure in my work. Your work? Mom's voice cracked. Breaking into people's accounts is your work. No, finding security weaknesses before criminals can exploit them is my work, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I'm trying to protect you. By doing exactly what you claim to be protecting us from. Dad slammed his hand on the counter. How is this different from what those scammers do? Because I'm not stealing anything. I'm showing you the vulnerabilities so you can fix them. The argument escalated from there. I tried explaining penetration testing, ethical hacking, white hat security work, but technical terms only made them more suspicious. Every explanation I offered sounded like an excuse to them. Every security solution I proposed felt like another invasion to them. I want that program removed from our computer immediately, Mom demanded, pointing at the password manager. But it will make your account safer, I protested. We managed just fine before you decided to hack us, Dad said. Remove it. Now. Reluctantly, I uninstalled the password manager while they watched. The irony was painful. I was removing the one thing that would actually protect them. We need to establish some ground rules, Dad said after I finished. This is still our house, and we expect our privacy to be respected. That means no accessing our accounts, no security audits, and no installing anything on our devices without explicit permission, Mom added. But your current setup is dangerous. I tried one last time. That's our concern, not yours, Dad said firmly. These are our boundaries, Arlo. If you can't respect them, perhaps this living arrangement isn't going to work. I stared at them, these two people who had raised me, who I loved deeply, who were now looking at me like I was some kind of criminal. They didn't see a professional trying to help. They saw a threat. Fine, I said finally. I won't touch your accounts again. I retreated to my room, the presentation with all those glaring security vulnerabilities still open on my laptop. I couldn't force them to be secure. But I also couldn't stop worrying about what might happen if someone with actual malicious intent targeted them. The next few days were tense. Mom and Dad watched me carefully whenever I used my computer in the living room. They lowered their voices when discussing financial matters. Dad even started taking his phone with him to the bathroom, like I might try to grab it the moment he set it down. Then I overheard them talking in the kitchen late one night. "I'm just not comfortable with him having access to our Wi-Fi anymore," Mom was saying. "Who knows what he can see?" "I changed the banking passwords like you suggested," Dad replied. "But maybe we should take more precautions." My sister said we should consider changing the locks just to be safe. "You think that's necessary? He's still our son." "A son who broke into our private accounts, Thomas. I don't know what else he might do." I stood in the hallway, frozen in disbelief. They were actually afraid of me. My own parents thought I might steal from them, or worse. All because I'd tried to help in the wrong way. The next morning I left early for a job interview at a security firm in the next town over. It went well enough, but not spectacular. Still, any job would be better than this growing tension at home. I had no idea that by the time I returned I would find myself locked out of my temporary home facing a text message that made it clear just how deeply I'd broken my parents' trust. I pulled into our cul-de-sac around 5:30 that evening, mentally rehearsing how I would tell my parents about the job interview. Maybe some good news would ease the tension. The interview hadn't resulted in an immediate offer, but they seemed interested, and a second round was scheduled for next week. Our house looked the same as always. Dad's meticulously maintained lawn, Mom's flower beds along the walkway, the American flag hanging by the front door. Nothing outwardly suggested anything had changed. I parked in the driveway behind Mom's sedan, grabbed my laptop bag, and walked to the front door. I pulled out my key, the same one I'd had since high school, and slid it into the lock. It didn't fit. I pulled it out, examined it, and tried again. The key wouldn't go in more than a quarter inch before stopping. The lock had been changed. My first thought was that I had somehow grabbed the wrong key, but a quick check of my keyring confirmed this was definitely the house key. Then I wondered if they'd had a break-in while I was gone, necessitating new locks. I pulled out my phone to call Mom when it buzzed with an incoming text message from her. "We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you." I stared at those words, reading them over and over. The message continued. "After what you did with our accounts, we can't risk having you access our home unsupervised. We've moved your essential belongings to the garden workshop. You can stay there until you find your own place." My mind raced through possible responses. Anger seemed justifiable, but unproductive. Pleading would only reinforce their view of me as untrustworthy. Instead, I opted for calm acknowledgement. "Noted. Clever, but you forgot one thing." I pressed send, then watched through the narrow window beside the door as Mom checked her phone inside. I saw her face change, uncertainty replacing the righteous indignation she'd likely felt when sending her message. She approached the door cautiously. "What did we forget, Arlo?" She called through the door, not opening it. "That I'm a security specialist who's been breaking into much more sophisticated systems than a residential door lock since college," I replied evenly. "If I were actually the threat you think I am, this wouldn't slow me down for 5 minutes." Dad appeared behind her now. "Is that a threat?" he demanded, moving closer to the door. "No, Dad. It's perspective. If I wanted to access your accounts, or your home against your will, I could. But I don't, because I respect you both, even if you clearly don't respect me or my profession." Mom's face hardened. "Respect. You invaded our privacy. I tried to protect you," I countered. "Just like I've been protecting clients for years. But you can't see past your fear of technology to understand that." "We're not stupid," Arlo, Dad said. "We know the difference between help and invasion." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, you've just kicked out the one person who was actually trying to keep you safe from real threats. Mom crossed her arms. We managed just fine before you moved back in. Did you? With passwords so weak, a child could crack them. With personal information broadcast all over social media. With financial details stored in a notebook on the kitchen counter. I could see Mrs. Dawson from next door, watching this scene unfold from her front yard, pretending to water plants while clearly eavesdropping. Great, now the entire neighborhood would know about the Bennett family drama. We've made our decision, Dad said firmly. Your things are in the workshop. There's a sleeping bag, your clothes, and your other computer. Things. The rest will stay secure in the house. So I'm essentially being banished to the shed, I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. Because I tried to help you, in a way you didn't understand. Because you violated our trust, Mom corrected. Actions have consequences, Arlo. We taught you that since you were small. I looked between them. These two people who had raised me, who had once been so proud of my academic achievements, who had cheered at my college graduation. Now they looked at me like I was a stranger, a threat to be managed rather than a son to be loved. Fine, I said finally. I'll stay in the workshop while I look for another place. But I want you both to know something. Despite what you think, I never intended to harm you or violate your privacy. Everything I did was to protect you from people who actually would take advantage of you. I turned and walked toward the backyard, feeling their eyes on me, until I rounded the corner of the house. The garden workshop had been my sanctuary as a teenager, a place where Dad let me tinker with old computers and electronics without cluttering up the house. Now it would be my exile. As I walked, I typed out a quick message to my friend Jake's parents, changed the locks. Apparently, I'm now a cyber criminal for trying to secure their accounts. Banished to the backyard workshop. His reply came quickly. Dude, that's harsh. Need a place to crash. I considered it, but something held me back. Running away would only confirm their suspicions. And despite everything, these were still my parents. I couldn't just walk away, especially knowing how vulnerable they were, both physically and digitally. Not yet, I replied. Going to try something first. I reached the workshop, a converted garden shed with electricity and basic insulation that Dad and I had fixed up years ago. The padlock was open. Another clear message that while I wasn't trusted in their house, they still expected me to stay close by. Parental control Bennett style. Inside, I found a sleeping bag laid out on the old couch, my suitcase and my backup equipment neatly arranged on the workbench. Mom had even left a small basket with granola bars, bottled water, and an electric kettle. Punishment with care packages was her specialty. I sat on the couch looking around at my new accommodations. Through the window, I could see the lights of my parents' house, my former bedroom window dark now. They had changed the locks, changed the gate code, and made it clear they no longer trusted me. But as I had texted Mom, they had forgotten one thing: this was my element. Security was my profession, my passion. And if they wouldn't let me protect them from inside the house, I would find another way to prove my worth. The question was, how could I rebuild that broken trust without further alienating the two most important people in my life? The workshop smelled of sawdust, machine oil, and memories. Dad had built it when I was 12 originally, as his own retreat from household chaos. But over time, as my interest in electronics grew, it became my space. He'd installed proper electricity workbenches and shelving. We'd spent countless hours here together, back when tinkering with mechanical things was an acceptable hobby in his eyes, before computers became my focus and created the divide between us. Outside, the sky darkened as storm clouds gathered. Perfect weather to match my mood. I unpacked my equipment, setting up a makeshift workstation. On the main bench, at least Mom had made sure my power strips and extension cords made it out here. I checked my phone again. No additional messages from my parents. Just silence. And the growing patter of rain on the metal roof. The rain increased to a downpour drumming loudly overhead. I found myself staring at an old box of components in the corner, dusty remnants of teenage projects. Circuit boards, wires, and ancient soldering iron. I pulled out a half-finished robot I'd abandoned in high school when coding became more interesting than hardware. Look at us now, I muttered to the robot's empty eye sockets. Both abandoned projects. My phone rang, startling me. Jake's name flashed on the screen. "You okay, man?" he asked when I answered. "Your text was concerning." "I'm fine," I said automatically, then corrected myself. "Actually, no, I'm not fine. I'm living in a shed because my parents think I'm some kind of cyber criminal. Want to talk about it? I can come pick you up, get you out of there." I considered it, but the rain was coming down in sheets now. "Not tonight. But thanks." "So what happened exactly?" I explained the whole situation, from discovering their terrible security practices to my well-intentioned but unauthorized security audit to the lockout. "I mean, I see both sides," Jake said when I finished. "You were trying to help, but from their perspective you did access their accounts without permission. Whose side are you on?" I asked, irritated that my best friend wasn't completely supporting me. "Yours, obviously. But I also work in tech, so I understand what you were trying to do. Your parents don't have that context. To them, it probably looked exactly like what you've warned them about scammers doing." I hadn't considered that angle. To my parents unfamiliar with security protocols, my actions might have seemed indistinguishable from the very threats I'd warned them about. "So what do I do now?" I asked, watching water begin to leak through a corner of the roof. "You prove your value in a way they can understand," Jake said. "Show them what your skills are actually good for, without crossing their boundaries again." After we hung up, I sat in the darkening workshop listening to the rain and turning Jake's words over in my mind. How could I demonstrate the value of my skills without accessing their accounts or home systems again? A crack of lightning illuminated the workshop, followed immediately by a thunderclap that shook the windows. The storm was directly overhead now. I noticed water beginning to pool under the leaky corner and moved my equipment away from it. As I rearranged my workspace, my gaze fell on an old security camera Dad had installed outside the workshop years ago. It had stopped working, and he'd never replaced it. But seeing it gave me an idea. Our neighborhood had experienced several break-ins over the past year. Nothing major, mainly garage thefts and package stealing, but enough to make residents uneasy. Dad had mentioned it at dinner a few weeks ago, complaining about the neighborhood association's ineffective response. What if I could create a security system that would protect not just my parents' digital lives, but their physical home as well, something that wouldn't require accessing their private accounts or entering their house? I opened my laptop and began researching recent criminal activity in our area. Local news sites reported a pattern of thefts, primarily targeting homes where residents were clearly absent. The thieves seemed to watch for signs like accumulated mail, dark houses, or cars that didn't move for days. My parents weren't particularly careful about these things. They left lights on timers when they traveled. But in the same predictable pattern every time, they posted freely about their vacation plans on Facebook. They even had a key rock by the back door, that was obviously fake. From my position in the workshop, I could monitor the house and surrounding area without entering their space or accessing their accounts. I could create a security system that respected their boundaries while still protecting them. I pulled out a notebook and began sketching ideas energized by this new project. The storm continued outside, but I barely noticed. For the first time since the lockout, I felt a sense of purpose. Around midnight, the rain finally stopped. I stepped outside to stretch my legs and get some fresh air. The night was cool and damp after the storm, the yard glistening under the partial moonlight breaking through dispersing clouds. From here, I could see my parents' bedroom window, dark now. Were they sleeping peacefully confident in their new locks? Or were they lying awake wondering if they'd gone too far in exiling their son to the backyard? I thought about all the vulnerable points in their home security. The sliding door that never properly locked. The basement window with the broken latch. The garage door opener without modern rolling code technology. Things they didn't even realize were risks. Their digital vulnerability had been what initially concerned me, but their physical security was just as compromised. And unlike their online accounts, I could monitor and protect their home without accessing anything they considered private. I returned to the workshop with renewed determination. I might be sleeping on a couch in a glorified shed, but I still had my skills. And I would use those skills to protect my family, whether they appreciated it or not. As I settled back into work, I realized something important. This wasn't just about proving my worth to my parents anymore. This was about doing what I'd always done professionally, protecting people from threats they didn't fully understand, not for recognition but because it was the right thing to do. With that clarity, I opened my laptop and began planning Operation Bennett Security Upgrade. My parents had locked me out, but ironically, that might be exactly what was needed for me to truly help them. Morning light filtered through the workshop windows, waking me from a fitful sleep on the narrow couch. My back protested as I sat up, reminding me that I was 32, not the teenager who could once fall asleep anywhere without consequence. I checked my phone. No messages from Mom or Dad. I hadn't really expected any, but the confirmation of their silence still stung. After a quick breakfast of granola bars and water from my care package, I got to work on my security project. I'd spent half the night planning it out, and now it was time to implement. First, I needed to assess the current situation without trespassing on my parents' property or accessing their systems. Using my laptop, I connected to public resources about recent criminal activity in the area. The police department website showed 3 break-ins within a mile radius in the past month alone. All followed a similar pattern: homes targeted during the day when residents were out, entry through rear windows or doors, and primarily electronics and jewelry stolen. Next, I set up a basic monitoring system using equipment I already had. A small, low-power security camera positioned on the workshop eaves, angled to capture the backyard and rear of the house. Not intrusive enough to violate my parents' privacy, but sufficient to monitor the most vulnerable entry points. I programmed a simple motion detection algorithm that would alert me to unusual activity while filtering out normal movements like birds or the neighbor's cat. The system wouldn't record continuously, only when triggered by specific parameters. By midday, I had the rear of the house covered. But I needed more comprehensive protection. I used my lunch break to drive to the electronics store and invest in additional equipment, a few more small cameras, motion sensors, and a central hub to coordinate them. As I installed the new equipment around the perimeter of the yard, I was careful to stay within the boundaries of what could reasonably be considered the workshop's domain. I wasn't entering the house or monitoring inside it, just creating a protective perimeter around it. Around 3 o'clock, I noticed Mom through the kitchen window watching me work. Our eyes met briefly before she turned away. No wave, no acknowledgement. Just observation. That hurt more than the lock change. By evening, I had a functional security system monitoring the exterior of my parents' home. The cameras and sensors fed into a dashboard on my laptop, giving me real-time updates on any unusual activity. I programmed alerts to go to my phone, allowing me to respond quickly if needed. The final component was the most crucial: an automated alert system that would contact police if certain threat conditions were met without requiring my intervention. If the system detected a break-in attempt, it would automatically call for help even if I wasn't present. As darkness fell, I sat back to admire my work. From my laptop screen, I could see multiple views of the property, all exterior angles, nothing invasive. Motion sensors were active detection algorithms running. A small status display showed green across the board. For the first time since moving back home, I felt like I was using my skills appropriately. No boundary violations, no accessing private accounts, just pure security work focused on protecting my family. I was about to step outside for some fresh air when my phone pinged with a security alert. Someone was moving along the side fence, staying close to the shadows. The camera footage showed a hooded figure pausing occasionally to look at neighboring houses. Just a passerby. Maybe. But the behavior seemed oddly furtive for someone just taking an evening walk. I watched as the figure moved closer to our yard, then stopped to examine the neighbor's side gate. I set my phone to record and stepped outside, quietly staying in the shadows of the workshop. The figure had moved on from the neighbor's gate and was now approaching our property line. This could be completely innocent, I reminded myself. But the pattern matched what I'd read about the recent break-ins, individuals scoping out properties before returning later to target them. I captured several minutes of footage documenting the person's methodical examination of multiple houses on our street. They never entered any property, just observed occasionally, making notes on a phone. When they finally moved on, I returned to the workshop and reviewed the footage. Not conclusive evidence of criminal intent, but definitely suspicious. I saved the video and added additional parameters to my detection algorithm based on the observed behavior. Over the next 3 days, I continued refining my security system while maintaining my distance from the main house. Mom left food in a cooler outside the workshop door. Dad drove past me without stopping when I was installing a sensor near the driveway. We were living on the same property but in different worlds. The security system detected the same hooded figure twice more, always in the evening, always exhibiting the same pattern of scoping out houses. On the third occurrence, they lingered longer at our property, paying particular attention to the back door and basement windows, the very vulnerabilities I'd identified. I compiled all this information into a report complete with timestamps, images, and behavior analysis. This wasn't just paranoia. There was a clear pattern suggesting our home might be a target. The question was, should I bring this information to my parents? Would they even believe me? Or would they see it as another attempt to manipulate them? I decided to continue monitoring for one more day, hoping to gather more conclusive evidence before approaching them. My parents might not trust me, but hard evidence would be difficult to dismiss. That evening, while reviewing the day's security logs, I noticed something concerning. The hooded figure had returned, this time with a companion. They were more brazen now, actually testing the neighbor's gate latch and peering into windows. I increased the sensitivity on my alerts and prepared for the possibility that they might return to attempt an actual break-in. All the patterns pointed to an imminent attempt, possibly within the next 24 to 48 hours. Just before midnight, I was working on a job application when a high-priority alert buzzed my phone. Motion detected at the back door of my parents' house. I pulled up the camera feed immediately. The hooded figure was there now, wearing gloves and carrying a small bag. They were examining the back door lock with what appeared to be picking tools. My heart raced as I watched the attempted break-in happening in real time. This wasn't a drill or a false alarm. Someone was trying to break into my parents' home while they slept. The automated alert system would contact police within 30 seconds if the activity continued. But that might not be fast enough. I had to act now using the very skills my parents had come to fear to protect them from a much more immediate threat. The irony wasn't lost on me as I grabbed my phone and rushed toward the house, staying in the shadows. I moved silently across the wet grass, phone in hand, with the live security feed still running. The hooded figure was working on the back door lock with professional efficiency. This wasn't an opportunistic thief. This was someone who knew what they were doing. My security system had already triggered its automated police alert, but response time in our suburb averaged 8 minutes. Too long when someone was actively breaking into a house with my sleeping parents inside. I needed to intervene directly but safely. Confronting the intruder physically could be dangerous. Instead, I would use my technical advantage. From my phone, I remotely activated the exterior floodlights I'd integrated into my security system. The backyard suddenly blazed with light, exposing the would-be burglar, who jumped back momentarily blinded and disoriented. Next, I triggered the alarm system. I'd installed a piercing siren that shattered the night's silence. Through my earbuds connected to the outdoor microphones, I heard the burglar curse and drop something metallic, likely their lock-picking tools. The kitchen light flicked on inside the house. My parents were awake now. The burglar turned to flee. But I had positioned myself between them and their likely escape route. They spotted me and froze, calculating their options. "Police have been automatically notified," I called out, keeping my distance. "The entire property is under surveillance. Every move you make is being recorded." The figure bolted to my right, trying to escape through the neighbor's yard. I didn't pursue them directly, instead using my phone to track their movement through my network of cameras. They scaled the fence, separating our yard from the Johnsons' property next door. Inside the house, I could see Dad on the phone, presumably with 911, while Mom peered nervously through the blinds. They hadn't spotted me yet in the darkness beyond the floodlights. I continued tracking the burglar through my camera network as they moved through neighboring yards. When they paused to catch their breath behind the Wilsons' shed, I captured clear footage of their face as they briefly pulled down their hood. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. The burglar heard them too, and took off running again, this time toward the street. My last camera caught them jumping into a dark sedan parked 3 houses down. I quickly sent the video footage, including the partial license plate I'd captured, to the police department's email, with the subject line, "Evidence from 42 Maple Street. Attempted break-in." As the police cruisers pulled up in front of our house, I emerged from the shadows, hands visible to avoid any misunderstandings. 2 officers approached, weapons ready, but not drawn. "I'm the one who sent the alert," I explained, showing them my phone with the security dashboard. "I live here. That's my parents' house. I caught the whole attempted break-in on my security system." They verified my identity, and I walked them through what had happened, showing them the comprehensive footage from multiple angles. Their initial suspicion turned to professional interest as they realized the quality of the evidence I'd provided. "You set all this up yourself?" one officer asked, impressed by the security network. "Yes. I'm a cybersecurity specialist," I explained. "I noticed suspicious activity around the neighborhood and installed this system as a precaution." While I was speaking with the officers, Mom and Dad came outside, clutching their robes closed against the cool night air. Their expressions showed a mixture of fear from the break-in attempt and confusion at seeing me calmly discussing security footage with the police. "Arlo, what's happening?" Mom called out. One of the officers turned to them. "Your son's security system caught the perpetrator in the act and scared them off. He's already provided us with footage that should help us identify the suspect." Dad looked from the officer to me. His brow furrowed. "Security system? What security system?" "I installed it around the property after you. After I moved to the workshop," I explained, avoiding mention of being locked out. "I noticed suspicious activity in the neighborhood and wanted to make sure you were protected." The officers continued taking statements and examining the back door where the burglar had attempted entry. Their flashlights revealed scratch marks around the lock. A clear attempted break-in. "You're lucky your son had this system in place," the lead officer told my parents. "The suspect matches the description from several other break-ins in the area. Based on their tools and methods, they likely would have succeeded in entering your home, if not for the alarm and lights." Mom paled at this, reaching for Dad's hand. "They would have gotten in while we were sleeping." "Probably," the officer confirmed. "These aren't amateurs. They know what they're doing." As the police finished their report, promising to follow up once they reviewed the additional footage I'd sent, my parents stood awkwardly in the yard, looking at me as if seeing me for the first time. When the police finally left, promising increased patrols in the area, we were left in an uncomfortable silence. The security lights still illuminated the yard, casting harsh shadows across the grass where we stood. "You installed a security system?" Dad finally asked. "Just external monitoring," I clarified. "Cameras and sensors around the perimeter of the property. Nothing inside the house. Nothing that violated your privacy." "And that's how you knew someone was trying to break in?" Mom asked. "Yes. The system detected unusual movement at the back door and alerted me. It also automatically notified police when it confirmed a break-in attempt was in progress." Dad looked around at the property, suddenly seeming to notice the small, discreet cameras positioned strategically around the yard. "How long have you been working on this?" "Since you changed the locks," I said quietly. "I wanted to make sure you were safe, even if you didn't want me in the house." Mom's expression softened slightly. "You did this even after we locked you out." "Of course I did. You're my parents. Just because you don't trust me doesn't mean I stopped caring about your safety." Dad cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "The officer said this system probably prevented a serious break-in. Based on the pattern of the suspect's previous activities, yes," I confirmed. "They've hit several houses in the neighborhood. They were specifically targeting your back door and basement windows, the most vulnerable entry points to your home." Mom shivered, whether from the cool night air or the thought of what might have happened without the security system. I couldn't tell. "Why don't we continue this conversation inside?" Dad suggested, surprising me. "It's cold out here." The invitation to enter the house I'd been barred from just days ago hung in the air between us. A small olive branch, perhaps, but significant. "I'd like that," I said simply. As Dad unlocked the back door using the new key they'd never given me, I realized this might be the beginning of rebuilding what had been broken. Not because I'd forced my way back in, but because I'd found a way to use my skills to protect them while respecting their boundaries. We stepped inside together, the security lights automatically dimming behind us as the system registered authorized entry. A system they hadn't known existed, but that had just protected their home and possibly their lives. Sometimes actions spoke louder than explanations. And tonight, my parents had seen firsthand what my suspicious security skills were actually good for. The kitchen felt both familiar and strange as we sat around the table, steam rising from the mugs of tea Mom had insisted on making. No one spoke for several minutes. The ticking of the ancient cat clock on the wall, the only sound between us. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "I think we owe you an apology, Arlo." The words hung in the air, unexpected and weighty. "We overreacted," Mom added, staring into her tea. "We didn't understand what you were trying to do with our accounts." I took a careful sip of tea, organizing my thoughts before responding. "I also owe you an apology," I said. "I shouldn't have accessed your accounts without permission, regardless of my intentions. I violated your privacy, and I'm sorry for that." Dad nodded slowly. "We still don't fully understand your work. All this hacking, business security testing, it seems so invasive." "That's on me," I acknowledged. "I've never really explained my profession properly. I just expected you to trust that what I do is ethical and important without giving you the context to understand why." "And we never really tried to understand," Mom admitted. "It was easier to dismiss it as computer stuff than to learn about what you actually do." The tension that had built over weeks began to dissolve, replaced by something resembling mutual understanding. Not complete. Not yet. But a start. "Would you be willing to show us?" Dad asked. "Not by breaking into our accounts," he added quickly, "but by explaining what you do in a way we might understand." I'd like that, I said, feeling a genuine smile for the first time in days. And maybe I could help you secure your accounts properly. With your permission this time. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We'd appreciate that. Tonight was eye-opening. If that person had gotten in, she didn't finish the sentence. Graced if table. To my two Aish. To my two people. They didn't. I reassured her. And they won't. The security system I installed will continue protecting the house. Speaking of which, Dad said that's quite a setup you created in just a few days. From a workshop, no less. I explained the components of the system, keeping the technical jargon to a minimum. To my surprise, they asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in understanding how it worked. As the night wore on, our conversation shifted from security systems to more personal matters. The barriers that had formed between us started to crumble as we talked openly about expectations, misunderstandings, and the generation gap that had contributed to our conflict. We were wrong to lock you out, Dad finally said around 2 a.m. This is your home too, for as long as you need it to be. I actually got a call earlier today about a second interview, I told them. It looks promising. A security consultant position with Maxwell Technologies. That's wonderful news, Mom said, genuine pride in her voice. Though I have to admit I've gotten used to having you around again, even if you were only in the backyard. We laughed together, the sound washing away the last of the tension. The next morning, I moved my belongings back into my bedroom. The workshop returned to being just a workshop, not an exile. Dad helped carry my equipment, asking questions about each component and its purpose. Over the following weeks, we established a new pattern of interaction. I taught them basic digital security practices. They made efforts to understand my profession, and we all respected each other's boundaries more consciously. I created simplified guides for them on password management, social media privacy, and recognizing phishing attempts. Mom proudly told her friends about her cybersecurity expert son, who had prevented a break-in with his advanced surveillance system. 2 weeks after the attempted break-in, the police arrested the suspect based partly on the evidence from my security system. The detective called personally to thank me for the quality of the footage, which had helped them connect the suspect to 6 other break-ins in the area. The job interview with Maxwell Technologies led to an offer, one that would allow me to work remotely with occasional travel to their main office. I could maintain my independence while staying close enough to keep an eye on my parents. As I prepared to move into my own apartment, Dad helped me pack my computer equipment. You know, he said, carefully wrapping my external hard drive in bubble wrap. I never really understood why you were so drawn to all this technology. I always saw computers as just tools, not passion. They are tools, I agreed, but powerful ones that can either protect or harm depending on who's using them and how. Like any tool, I suppose, he mused. A hammer can build a house or break a window. Exactly. What I do is make sure the digital hammers of the world are being used to build, not break. He nodded, finally seeming to understand. The day I moved out, Mom handed me a small box, a housewarming gift, she explained. Inside was a new key to their front door and a piece of paper with their updated Wi-Fi password written on it. So you can always get in, she said, and always stay connected. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it was meaningful. Trust, regained, and reinforced. I set up my new apartment with a state-of-the-art security system naturally and established a remote monitoring connection to my parents' home with their full knowledge and consent. Every Sunday I joined them for dinner, often spending time afterward helping them navigate the increasingly digital aspects of their lives. The experience taught me several profound lessons about communication, trust, and the importance of meeting people where they are not where you think they should be. My technical skills were valuable, but worthless if I couldn't translate them into terms others could understand and accept. For their part, my parents learned that sometimes the next generation's ways of doing things, while different and perhaps initially unsettling, might actually offer protections and advantages they hadn't considered. We all discovered that trust once broken can be rebuilt, but only through patience, clear communication, and consistent actions that match our words. The new locks on their door no longer symbolized exclusion, but rather a mutual respect for boundaries and security, both physical and digital. As for the security system that brought us back together, it continues to protect their home, a silent guardian born from conflict, but serving as a daily reminder that sometimes our most valuable contributions come not from forcing our way home in, but from finding ways to protect what matters most, while respecting the boundaries of those we love. Have you ever had a misunderstanding with family members that seemed impossible to resolve? How did you bridge that communication gap? Drop a comment below to share your experience. If this story helped you think differently about family conflicts or technology divides, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning family crises into opportunities for growth. And don't forget to share this with someone who might be struggling with similar generational misunderstandings. Thanks for listening to my journey from lockout to reconciliation. And remember, sometimes the skills others fear most in you might be exactly what they need when real danger comes knocking.